Okay, before we do this lesson, let's do a quick recap. It doesn't even have to be called bell work. Let's do a quick recap of rationalizing denominators. So follow along or write them down, work ahead, see what you know. We've got 3 over the square root of 12. So when I have a square root, I just need a pair of 12s. So that's one way that you can do this problem. You can also break this down to be 3 over 2 times the square root of 3. And then instead of multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 12, we're going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 3. So the square root of 3 over the square root of 3, I'm going to highlight that for you. So here I'm just making sure you understand what we're doing. We're taking the original problem, 3 over the square root of 12, and we're multiplying it by a factor of 1. So multiplying by 1 does not change the value, it just changes what things look like. So in the numerator I have 3 times the square root of 3, and in the denominator I have 2 times 3. Well, 2 times 3 is 6, but look what happens. These common factors cancel out, and we end up with the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, let's try the next one. I'm actually going to make myself a little bit of room here. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to resize it, shrink it up like a shrinky dink. Okay, 3rd time's a charm. Okay, we've got the square root of x plus 1 all over 2. So it says rationalize the denominator or the numerator. So in this first example, we wanted to rationalize the denominator because the denominator was irrational. In this next one, we're going to want to rationalize the numerator because it's the numerator that's irrational. This is a handy tool to have when we're working with calculus differentiation. So multiplying the numerator by the conjugate, not the conjugate, sorry, the conjugate's going to come up in the next one. So I've got the square root of x plus 1 over 2. I'm going to multiply by another x plus 1, square root of x plus 1. So now I've got a pair. Let's use blue again. I like being consistent. So I'm multiplying by a factor of 1, and then the square root times itself. When it's a square root, we're looking for pairs, and we've got a pair of x plus 1s, so now I just have x plus 1 in the numerator over 2 times the square root of x plus 1. This looks weird, but we accomplished what they wanted us to, which was rationalizing the numerator. Next one, we need to rationalize the denominator. So rationalizing the denominator, this is the one I was just looking at. We need to multiply by the conjugate. Hopefully you remember how to do that. I'll quickly review it for you right here. Multiplying by the conjugate is what's going to get rid of those irrational values. So we've got this denominator, the square root of 5 plus the square root of 2. If I multiply by the square root of 5 minus the square root of 2, and of course I'd have to do that in the numerator as well. In the numerator, I'm going to get 1 times the square root of 5 minus the square root of 2. And in the denominator, my first is 5, right? Square root of 5 times square root of 5 is 5. My outer is negative square root of 10. My inner is positive square root of 10. Well, that cancels each other out. So when you're multiplying by conjugates, you're just looking at the first times the first and the last times the last. Well, the last times the last, that would be square root of 2 times square root of 2, which is 2. So we've got the square root of 5 minus 2, square root of 5 minus the square root of 2 all over 3. And let me resize that. I'm struggling here with my resize tool. There we go. Beautiful. And one more, rationalizing the denominator right here. Again, I'm going to have to multiply by a conjugate. So I've got 1 over the square root of x minus the square root of x plus 1. So we're going to multiply by the conjugate of that denominator. The conjugate is the square root of x plus the square root of x plus 1. And really, I mean, I've said it in another video, really the calculus, it's all about being able to manipulate your algebra. So the more efficient, the more effective, the more capable, the more competent you are in being able to multiply by these conjugates and understanding rationalizing a denominator versus rationalizing a numerator, understanding what rationalize means, all of that's going to help you along the way. The square root of x times the square root of x is x, and then the square root of x plus 1 times the square root of x plus 1 is x plus 1, and there's a big fat minus in between that. So I have to put that x plus 1 in parentheses. So I've got the square root of x plus the square root of x plus 1 all over negative 1. X minus x cancels out. And then that negative, we're just going to bring that up to the numerator. So it's going to make all of the numerator negative. So negative square root of x minus the square root of x plus 1. And that's what I would say is the answer right there. Beautiful job. Beautiful job.